Good morning. Good morning. Well, hold on just here a second. They're going to stream the slide out to the Pioneer areas, so they're trying to get that all set up. The good thing for them is they don't have to, there's no camera to look at me, so they don't got to look at me. Unfortunately, you're stuck with it.
Great.
Let's see what you got going on.
What's that? Beauty's in the eyes of the beholder.
857.
857-232-0158.
Hello, please enter your 6-digit conference code.
787-580.
75.
After we finish with the Gosho presentation,
Welcome to free conference calling. The conference has not started.
Any Q&A.
You are the host. Please enter your 4-digit
What's the
host code
4-digit
to
code?
open the conference.
Ask away.
If you are not the host, please press the star key to connect to the conference and wait.
What's the host code? Do you know?
Yeah.
Let us know.
So we have a little Technoshima with the audio only. We need a host code. You got it? Okay.
The conference has not started. If you are the host, please enter your 4-digit host code to open the conference. If you are not the host, please press the star key to connect to the conference and wait.
2622.
We will now connect you to your call.
Let's call team.
There are 2 attendees in this conference. The host has joined the
Can I
conference.
mute it on our end?
Mute it
Right through here?
through here, because isn't that plugged into his mic?
No.
It's not?
No.
Is there a mute button?
Well, is there anyone on this call?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
It's Romy and Fran from Agate Pass.
Okay, so we want to do an audio check. Go ahead, and Chris, can you
Morning, Fran. Good morning, Romy.
hear us okay?
Good morning.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. We're going to put you on mute now. Thank you.
Angela.
Oh, I'm sorry, not mute.
So you need to do their own mute.
Yeah, could you mute your lines, please? Okay. So this is what it looks like over there.
So we're good to go.
You should be good to go.
Thumbs up, Chris.
Okay, thank you for those out in Bainbridge Island joining us on this streaming today. Glad that you were able to call in. And thank you for all the people that came here today to listen. I'd like to give a big shout out to John back there who's been working vigorously to get a lot of streaming going. What a great way to be able to have other people join that maybe normally couldn't. So that's really a big plus benefit for us. So today we're going to talk about the persecution at Tatsunokuchi. We're trying to get the slides up. I'm a visual person. I learned by visual. So we tried to put some slides up also that people, we go through this, maybe they can look at it and it's easier than just trying to listen to somebody talk. All right, so the Gosho today is the persecution of Tatsunokuchi. So we're going to go to the next slide. No, back
You
one.
guys synced up. Hooray for computers.
Yay.
Wow, how many of those you got? Yeah. Oh, there we go. So I found this picture and I thought it was pretty appropriate for this Gosho because it's talking about Shijo Kingo and Nichiren Daishonin at a time that was very crucial for Nichiren Daishonin's life. And I know last month the Gosho study really talked about the
This is YouTube.
role of mentor and disciple.
Streaming audio.
And so I can't think of a
Audio and
more
video. This should be changed.
extreme way of looking at this
This is
than
on
a
internet.
visual
This
that
is what I'm
says
saying
that
now.
while Nichiren Daishonin was about to
So
be
you're signed
headed,
into what should be
his
streaming
disciple
from
Shijo Kingo ran down
And then
there
from the
and
internet.
grabbed the reins of a horse. And as you think about that, back in 13th century feudal Japan, they didn't have to ask anybody, go to court or anything. They just got hell.
Google.
You know, that's the way life was then. And yet here, Shijo Kingo went down there to grab the reins because his mentor was actually on the verge of being killed. And so when we think about that, we don't have to do that today. We're very fortunate that those days are hopefully long gone, and that there's a different type of relationship when it comes to mentor and disciple. But the concept is exactly the same. So let's go to the next slide. So the next slide, line up here.
This has a presentation mode, doesn't it?
So a little bit of the background, this happened on September 21st, 1271. That's 9 days after that Nichiren wrote this, 9 days after the actual Tatsunokuchi persecution. Tatsunokuchi is a beach in Japan. I was fortunate to live in Japan for 12 years, and I've actually visited this beach. And so when I was standing there, I was kind of thinking about, wow, what it must have meant, not realizing then the historical nature of what this place represented. Because right across from that, I could see Enoshima is where they talk
I'll
about
have to set up
where
the stream to do that,
that blinded everybody came from. I could see that, and to sit there and visualize this happening, you know, this was real. This is not something someone conjured up or anything. This is real life that we can now study because of these writings of Nichiren Daishonin that he left for all the future. So the events that leading up to Tatsunokuchi, there's some names that you'll see in here throughout that were pretty prevalent when it came to persecution of Nichiren Daishonin. So up to this time, Rokan was a priest who really had it out for Nichiren Daishonin. The reason was Nichiren's teaching and the way he taught was so powerful that many people from the other priest religion actually convert to Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and Nichiren's Buddhism. And by doing that, he was taking away members from this other person who really became out enraged by this, you know, who also then had a lot of clout with the government back then. You know, they were really tied together between them and others in the Hojo clan. So during that time when they complained about those things, you know, they conspired to persecute Nichiren Daishonin together. So he actually had almost what you would consider like the whole government of Japan, you know, working to persecute Nichiren Daishonin. You know, that's kind of hard to understand how a whole country can, this one person, simply because they taught a difference, or maybe it's not that hard to believe nowadays. You know, maybe some similarities there. So, but I mean, to really think about how that must be for these people back then. And again, the only thing they had a right to was breathe air. They had no other right. I mean, they could cut their head off just for looking at them. And so, when you start taking away practitioners from another philosophy, and if they're connected to the government, that can get kind of personal, and that's what happened. And so they actually really had a rage towards Nichiren Daishonin. They were going to do anything they could to stop him. So a lot of those events leading up to this is why they finally got to the point they're saying, hey, we're losing the battle here. So we have to take some extreme steps. And so the extreme step was trying to kill him. And so that's what the Tatsunokuchi persecution is about. The True World Precept priest Roikon and his followers attacked Nichiren due to their deep hatred for him. I mean, they thought that if there's one thing bad in the world, it was Nichiren Daishonin. And I mean, as we studied and you see pictures of him, you know, he's this little guy and he's very serene, and you know, and yet everybody's trying to kill him. And you know, you're sitting there saying, we don't act like that even in road rage. You know, we still have that kind of thing, and that's against a person that isn't as nice as Nichiren Daishonin. So, because Nichiren was gaining followers which threat leaders of other Buddhist schools, Roikon influenced government officials to attack him. A large group of soldiers, led by Eino Seimon, attacked Nichiren at his dwelling in Kamakura and arrested him. So Haemon He was a leading official in the Hojo Regency, so he was pretty high up there. He and Roikon collaborated to persecute the Daishonin. He was directly involved in the execution of 3 believers called the Atsuhara persecution as well. People who have studied Buddhism realize that actually that was one of the evidence for Nichiren Daishonin inscribing the Daigohonzon, when he realized that the believers themselves would not give up and recant their faith. And so this is the same person. So that's how high up he was and how powerful he was in the shogunate government at the time. He was also the official that ordered Nichiren's execution at Tatsunokuchi. So, I mean, he, conspiring with Roikon, really created this thing where their hatred was so deep that they decided they were going to actually cut off Nichiren's head. And so, as I think if people have read this, they saw that that was unsuccessful. And I actually went on YouTube last night, and there was a animation of Tatsunokuchi persecution. And it was really interesting. It wasn't an animation, it was kind of like a movie somebody made. And so it shows, you know, Nichiren sitting there chanting, and then this group of followers there being held back by, you know, guards, and they got the executioner out there, and you know, everybody, his disciples are chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. So Nichiren himself starts chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, and as the swordsman raises the sword, here comes that bright light. They say it may have been lightning or something that came, but it struck the sword in the video. It struck the sword, and it paralyzed the person. So, I mean, you stop and think about it. They didn't have to explain themselves to anybody, and yet something stopped the swordsman from cutting off his head at that crucial moment. You know, it's hard to believe. Could it have been lightning? Yeah, it could have been. But whatever the reason was, you know, even Nichiren was sitting on, you know, he's sitting there going, "Go on, I just want an individual. You know, come get me." And they're all going like, "No way." You know, by that time they became fearful. And we learn a lot about the protection of the Shoten Zenji, you know, the functions of the universe, you know, and all these seem to really come into play during this thing on the beach in Tatsunokuchi. Okay, next slide, please. So I want to go to a key passage in the Gosho. It's at the time of my persecution on the 12th, not only did you accompany me to Tatsunokuchi, but also you declared that you would die by my side. This can only be called wondrous, and that's out of the major writings of Nichiren Daishonin. And if you go to the Gosho itself, there's actually a full page talking about this particular thing. And again, I think this relates back to the mentor-disciple relationship. The fact that in these deathly times, these weren't just casual things. They weren't going to just strip away your birthday. You know, they were literally going to kill Nichiren Daishonin, and yet a samurai ran to protect his mentor and was willing to give up his life at that moment. And, you know, so Nichiren really called this out and said, this can only be called wondrous, that when the entire government of Japan was trying to kill him, one individual showed up to protect him and willing to give his own life at that time. You know, that's why Nichiren came out and said that this is wondrous. It's because no one else did. No one else came out and would actually risk being killed themselves, because that's exactly what, you know, the guards and the shogunate there would have done. Next page, please. So, hearing of the plan to kill Daishonin, Shijo Kingo dashed barefoot to his side and accompanied him to Tatsunokuchi, prepared to die alongside him. So, I don't know about you, but I don't walk barefoot no place. And here was Nichiren Daishonin, or Shijo Kingo, running barefooted to be there to hopefully prevent, and if not prevent, then to actually die with his mentor. President Ikeda says, Nichiren declared that the bond of mentor and disciple linking him and Shijo Kingo, who faced the prospect of death alongside him at Tatsunokuchi, can only be described as wondrous. And so President Case also goes on, as the sword was drawn, Kingo wept and said to the Daishonin, "These are your last moments." But the Daishonin responded calmly that he could imagine no greater joy than giving his life for the sake of the Lotus Sutra, telling Kingo that he should smile and rejoice. Now stop, think about that. How would you have felt if you were there? I mean, would you be thinking calmly and somebody tells you to be calm and rejoice and smile? You know, but I think that goes on to talk about the life state of Nichiren. And it says, despite facing life-threatening persecution, Nichiren expressed his same serene life state that was based on his dedication to the happiness of all people. So here he was about to get his head cut, and he's still encouraging his disciple. You know, as an example, we can read that now and say, wow. You know, so we're going to talk a little bit later about his life state and what that kind of means also, so if that's okay. Everybody still awake? Yes. Okay, just want to make sure. All right, I'm about to go sleep myself. Next slide. Okay, key passage number 2. Because he died there for the Lotus Sutra, how could it be anything less than the Buddha land? This being so, then every Buddha place where Nichiren meets persecution is the Buddha land. And there's actually one of the terms that we want to talk about is the Buddha's land. So what does that mean? Well, we all remember oneness of person in their environment. So if the person's life condition is Buddha, then the environment is Buddha. So that makes it the Buddha land. So does that apply only to Nichiren Daishonin? Who else does it apply to? All of us, right? Yeah. And we're going to talk even more about that later because that's a very important point. Next slide, please. Okay, President Case says, to remain unshaken when confronted with a persecution that might mean laying down one's life for the sake of the Lotus Sutra, that is itself is an expression of the sublime state of Buddhahood. No doubt this conviction prompted his assertion that the place where he endured such persecution could not be anything less than the Buddha land. Since it is a Buddha land, the person who dwells there is a Buddha. So one is a person in their environment. Although this is not to say that it's the Buddha land and that's why we're Buddhists. It's the Buddha land because we're Buddhists. We need to make sure that we don't get those two confused. Because that's, quite honestly, I know when I was first beginning my practice 40 years ago, that I was waiting for that environment to change, and when it did, then I could become happy. It wasn't until I practiced and studied Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism that I realized it was actually the other way around. And so this is saying the same thing. What it's saying is that as Buddhas, we can be in the Buddha land, not the other way around. It's not some place. And the other Buddhisms of the time, all those places were external. They were somewhere else. They were the Buddha's land in the East. They were, always otherworldly. They were not the here and now and where we are. We had to go there to become happy or enlightened. And still to this day in Japan, they still practice those philosophies. Nichiren makes clear that Shijo Kingo, who was prepared to offer his life for the sake of the Lotus Sutra, is also a Buddha. So, as we're going to discuss even more, is the fact that Buddhahood is not exclusive to Nichiren Daishonin or Shakyamuni. It's every person. And we'll talk a little bit, they keep saying the Lotus Sutra. Well, we recite 2 chapters of the Lotus Sutra, the 2nd and the 16th. One is the expedient means, and one is called the lifespan chapter. Okay, so one is talking about the fact that for the first time they say that every single human being has the Buddha nature. It's the first time they ever said it. Before that, if you study the teachings, it's always talking about how certain groups can do things. Come on today. But then it also talks about the lifespan portion of that, says that life is not just this lifetime. You know, this is lifetime after lifetime. And as you read it, they do have the English interpretation in the back of the Gongyo book. We recite this every day, hopefully twice a day. And what they're talking about is that Shakyamuni even said that he had attained enlightenment not underneath the Bodhi tree this lifetime, but in previous lifetimes. And he gave a time, go Hyakujin Tengo. I don't know what that means in English. 500 something, a long time ago. I was pretty young then. So, but as we study more, we learn that, and we're going to get a little bit more into this. I don't want to ruin the punchline here. But, you know, Nichiren also talked about that, and he is the Buddha of Kuanganjo, which means time without beginning. So, who taught who what? So we're going to talk a little bit more as we go through the lecture on that as well. President Keita said, in the age after the Buddha's passing, any place where Buddhists or people practice in exact accord, that's a key word, I think, exact accord, with the Buddha's teaching is a place where the eternal Buddha constantly dwells. Who is that? Who is Nichiren talking, or President Keita talking about? Us. Okay? So I think, to me, when I read this, though, they're talking about an exact accord. Does that mean that we have to go get on a horse and be about executed on a beach somewhere? No. But we talk about mentor-disciple, right? And even today with President Keita, you know, can I live President Keita's life? No. But I can be of the same mind as President Keita for the true happiness of all humanity. Okay? So that's where that mentor-disciple thing comes in. But it also is important to remember that, you know, we still have to go out in our everyday lives. So one of the things in study I always think about is the purpose of study, Buddhist study, is to take something and put it into our daily practice that will create value for ourselves and others. So if we take one thing from our study and we really chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and we take and we share that with others in our everyday life, creating value, then that's fulfilling the purpose of what Buddhist study is. Remember, they said without practice and study, there can be no Buddhism. So, but Buddhism, it has to have a practical application. It can't be just theory. It has to do something in our everyday life. You know, Nichiren Daishonin was real. Shijo Kingo was real. You know, the guy that tried to cut his head off was real. Those were real people. Okay? President Keita is real. So, you all are real, I hope. So, you know, that means that right in this room, how much Buddha nature, how many Buddhas are there in this room? Those who practice the exact accord. So this says, this applies to all practitioners. The place where we dedicate our lives for Kosen Rufu becomes a Buddha's land. It's not some other place, or it's not someone else. It's this place, and it's us, and it's now. That's what the difference is. You know, I talk to my son all the time. Everything I say, hey, can you do this for me? Can you do this? Everything's tomorrow. Yeah. Anybody have that problem with it? Okay. So what I always tell him is, I'm going to quote President Keita's guidance to you, okay? So, and what we're talking about is the here and now. Live in the moment, and we're going to study a little bit more when we get to true cause, what the meaning of true cause is. But that's really what the answer is. It's not about tomorrow, it's not about yesterday, it's about right now. So, next slide, please. Okay, now here's a key concept, and it's a really, really, really important key concept. And we're going to talk a lot more about this because I think that this is so important. So it's casting off the transient and revealing the true. The Japanese say Hoshaku Kenpon. That's what this term in Japanese is. And I've read this many, many times over the years. And about who's this applicable to, okay, and how does that work? And so that's why this is in there. This is actually a quote from the opening of the Eyes, which we know is one of the major writings of Nichiren Daishonin, right? So On the 12th day of the 9th month of last year, September 12, 1271, between the hours of the rat and the ox, 11 p.m. to 3 a.m., this person named Nichiren was beheaded at Tatsunokuchi. It is his soul that has come to this island of Sado, and that's right out of the major writings. And so that's really important. Again, they talk about the time that's how they defined time back in those days, is they used animals and kind of like a Chinese type calendar for time. And so what did that mean? I mean, I remember when I was growing up, I learned about spirits and ghosts and those type of things, and I was sitting there at first, I'm going, how'd that work? Well, we're going to learn a little bit about that, I hope. Next slide, please. Nichiren implies that though the ordinary person called Nichiren's transient identity died at Tatsunokuchi, Nichiren, the Buddha of the latter day of the law, Nichiren in his true identity, reached Sado safely to fulfill his mission. So when I first heard about this, I had these visions of, a crab casting off its old shell, or a snake that's, getting rid of its other skin. And I'm sitting there going, no, maybe that's not exactly what they're talking about. But then you stop, think about it. Nichiren Daishonin, or the body, made it to Sado Island. But yet he's saying that Nichiren, that person, died. So what is he really talking about? He's talking about the life condition of Buddha. He cast off to say, up to this point, he's never really said that he was the true Buddha of the latter day of the law. He was always a bodhisattva, the leader of the bodhisattvas of the earth, the votary of the Lotus Sutra. But in this case, he specifically came out and he said, I'm the true Buddha of the latter day of the law. He cast off the transient identity of working in the 9 worlds, and he displayed the 10th world of Buddha in a level of non-regression. And I'm going to talk about that for a few minutes because I think that's important when it comes to me. And maybe if it's me, it's maybe not just me. President Kato was told that he wouldn't live to be 30 years old, but he became the 3rd president of the Soka Gakkai at the age of 32, and has since continued dedicating his life to fulfilling his mission for Kosen Rufu, even today at 88. Okay? So up to that point, as we've read his life, New Human Revolution, he was sickly, he was having troubles with all these things. He had family members that were drafted, so to speak, into the war. The family had plenty of suffering. But when he became the president, his total focus, Nichiren Daishonin's total focus was what? Once he said, I'm the true Buddha of the latter day of the law. It was totally for the accomplishment of Kosen Rufu and the happiness of all humanity, right? So what did President Kato do? Was it not the same exact thing? Constantly? So we'll get to that other point in a minute. For us, the fundamental meaning of this is not that the Buddha had revealed himself to be an eternal Buddha, superior to and divorced from ordinary people or living beings of the 9 worlds, the life state from hell through to bodhisattva, but rather that it is a call for people to refocus on Shakyamuni as a human being. Or to put another way, it is a call to adopt the human Shakyamuni Buddha as a model, emulating him so that they can awaken to the inherent greatness within their own lives. So it's not some transcendental type, I was alive during the guru phases. Y'all remember that? They played the sitar and all that, And it's nothing like that. Nichiren Daishonin was going through persecutions, was going through problems. I don't know too many human beings that don't have problems as well. So he's showing us through his own behavior how to elevate your life to the state of Buddha. And he gave us the way to do that. Next slide, please. Got clock, right? Oh, yeah. So, And continuing on with casting off the transient, revealing the true. President Keita, casting off the transient, revealing the true means revealing the true for all people. That is, bringing forth the supremely noble life state inherent in our own lives and helping others to do the same. We are Buddhas, and so is everyone else. Casting off the transient and revealing the true serves as the ultimate basis for our actions to respect all people. President Keita said, committed to fulfilling his fundamental vow, at one with the great vow of the Buddha for the happiness of all humanity, he put his power and ability freely and fully to work, boldly facing every challenge while calling on people, yet to awaken to their original inherent nature to live true to themselves. When awakened, people take a stand. The significance of the Daishonin, casting off the transient and revealing the true, is fully realized. And I did a little research about, so when is it, do you think that you've cast off your transient identity for the first time? Anybody have any ideas? How about the first time you chanted Nam-myoho Renge Kyo? How about the day you received your Gohonzon? How about the day you introduced another person to help them receive their Gohonzon? How about every morning and every evening when you sat in front of the Gohonzon and chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo? Are you not casting off at that time? You're elevating your life to the life of Buddha, right? So the difference, what's the difference then if we're all exactly the same as Nichiren? So what is the difference, or is there a difference? Well, at least in my life there is. And that is the difference between regression and non-regression. Nichiren Daishonin, as we follow his life, never ever lost focus, no matter what was going on in his life, on propagating Nam-myoho Renge Kyo for the happiness of humanity, the accomplishment of world Kosen-rufu, right? Agree with that? I do that when I'm doing Gongyo, and then I go outside and hit everyday life, and I regress. I think I'm not 365, 24/7 focused on accomplishing worldwide Kosen-rufu. That's the difference between I regress. So a person who doesn't regress would be like Nichiren Daishonin. I can think of at least one other person that is 24/7, 365, constantly working for the accomplishment of worldwide Kosen-rufu and the happiness of all humanity. Anybody have a name?
Sensei.
Who?
Sensei.
Sensei, President Keita. And you stop and think about that. I know I'm worried about what time is the game coming on tomorrow or tonight, whatever day it is. You know, I'm worrying how much the IRS is gonna charge me on my taxes, you know? So I'm worried about those things when Nichiren, his whole life, even though they're trying to cut off his head and they're exiling him, which by the way, you know, in the writings, there was kind of like a prediction of the things that would lead up to the true Buddha coming out. You know, a person born to the east in a certain land, and that corresponded to Japan. It also said that they would be attacked by sticks and swords and staves, and they would be exiled more than once. Okay, Nichiren Daishonin fulfilled every single one of those. The last one being the second exile. So when he went to Tatsunokuchi, immediately following that persecution, he was exiled for the second time, which fulfilled that prophecy. So he, through his life, exhibited that he was the true Buddha of Kuan-ganjo. So, President Keita says, today the Soka Gakkai must once again cast off the transient, reveal the true. To do that, each member must stand up with an awareness of being a bodhisattva on the earth with a commitment to fulfilling their vow as a genuine disciple of Nichiren Daishonin. Next slide. President Keita writes in The New Human Revolution, volume 26, page 196 and 197. Carrying on Mr. Makaguchi's vision, declared at that time that the Soka Gakkai members would dedicate their lives to Buddhism as the Daishonin emissaries committed to actualizing Kosen-rufu throughout Asia. actively striving as the bodhisattvas of the earth and as followers of Nichiren Daishonin to propagate Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. He wrote what it genuinely meant to cast off the transient and reveal the truth. In other words, for us, casting off the transient and revealing the truth is making Kosen Rufu the realization of happiness for all people, our highest purpose and mission in life in carrying out its courageous practice in our daily lives. It is demonstrating that we are followers of Nichiren Daishonin in our actions. You know, it's really easy for me to sit at home and chant to introduce somebody. I spend hours chanting like that. But then go out and try to talk to somebody takes courage. You know, oh, that's my friend. What will they think if I should think like that. And then I said, now, and here's where my wisdom came from my children. My children would bring friends around that I thought might be a little shaky as friends. So I'd always ask them, have you ever heard of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo? They do one of two things. They'd either chant with us, which most of them did, or they'd be the type of friends that I'm out of here. And I'm saying either way, I win. So, I think that, there's a lot to be said for in our actions, but that's the key. The key that everything Nichiren Daishonin did, everything that President Kida has done, they have done it with their action. And I'm going to show here in a little bit, I found this fascinating kind of a timeline for President Kida up until his 80s even. Next slide. Okay, concept of true cause. The spirit of true cause means always moving forward from this moment on. There's a key thing in Japanese that was called onimyo. Some of us may have heard that when we used to take exam. That means literally from this moment forward. And then the opposite of that was hongamyo, which means everything in the past. So Nichiren's Buddhism is the Buddhism of true cause versus the Buddhism of true effect, but not really, and I'll explain that in a minute. So Shakyamuni said that he did not attain enlightenment for the first time in his lifetime sitting under a Bodhi tree. He attained it at some time in the past. He never revealed what was the source of his enlightenment. We, through study, learned that that's because the time wasn't right. Okay? So, again, Nichiren Daishonin met all those criteria on the timeline, including the time. There's a Gosho even about that, on selection of time. That's a major writing too. Okay? So all these things really, as you read them, they begin to actually tie together. You're going, oh, wow, this really makes sense. So, but Shakyamuni then was so he had to attain enlightenment in the past to be able to, in the lifetime, his lifetime, say that he had attained enlightenment. So that was the effect from a cause he made in the past. Whereas with Nichiren, he made the original. He didn't need someone else to teach him. He understood that as the true Buddha. So he taught Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. He created that law that even Shakyamuni practiced to attain enlightenment. So Nichiren's Buddhism is true cause, which means from this moment forward. Doesn't matter what we've done in the past. If we start chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, or someone new that we introduce begins chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, that's the most important thing from this moment forward, because we know that true cause creates the effect. So that's why it's a concept, but it actually is true in our everyday life. So it's really important to understand that Nichiren Daishonin, though, as I said before, there's a little bit of difference. Nichiren Daishonin is actually the true Buddha of true cause and true effect, because he taught Nam-myoho Renge Kyo and showed enlightenment. And he did it non-regression, opposite of me. I regress a lot. Next slide, please. All right, I hope everybody recognizes that person. Again, when we talk about the most important things, they talk about Shakyamuni's behavior as a human being, the example he set. And you look at Nichiren Daishonin and his behavior, his actions. And you look at President Keita, and you look at President Toda, and you look at President Makaguchi. You stop and think about President Makaguchi went to prison, President Toda went with him. That's almost like Shijo Kingo going to die with Nichiren Daishonin. So they have their mission and we have ours. But if we're going to create world peace and happiness for all humanity, we have to give people the right tool to do that. And Nichiren said, you simply need to chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. So there was a find it here. Yes. So there's an explanation on attaining Buddhahood in this lifetime. It says, kind of, to help you understand what does that actually mean. So here's what the quote is from the Gosho. It says, thus the passage from the Vimalakirti Sutra cited by Nichiren clarified the meaning of Buddhahood and the Pure Land from the standpoint of Bodhisattva practitioner fighting amid the realities of daily life. And that was very important. Nichiren never shied away from the realities of everyday life. President Keita's never shied away from it. They're here, right? So we might as well become happy. Nichiren therefore states in conclusion, when deluded, one is called an ordinary being. But when enlightened, one is called a Buddha. That's in the major writings. In other words, the difference between ordinary people and Buddha is nothing more than the difference between delusions and enlightenment in ordinary people's minds. How then can we transform delusion into enlightenment? And it goes on to talk about the clear mirror guidance. And it also talks about the Gosho where it talks about a tarnished mirror. And so underneath the tarnish, what is there? That beautiful mirror, right? When you remove the tarnish, you can clearly see everything, right? So our lives are exactly the same way, and I like to talk about the mind of faith. So we have eyes, ears, we go through the six senses, right? Taste, touch, hearing, smell. We all got one more. What's the other one? Sight. Okay? So we see things and then our mind interprets how we see that. Okay? And so the mind of faith means when you're chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, you see the pure essence of the reality of that thing you're seeing, smelling, touching, hearing, tasting. So by chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, we're purifying that sixth sense on our mind. That allows us then to see things with the Buddha's eyes, hear things with the Buddha's ears. That's exactly what happens when we sit down in front of the Gohonzon and chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. So it also allows us to see that we ourselves are Buddhas. And that person I don't like, unfortunately, is a Buddha. And that, unfortunately, otherwise the law would be wrong, right? Yeah. So it's really important, and that's probably I love to judge. I do, I love to judge people. But one of the things I've learned over time is that through my practices, don't judge. I mean, we've all seen the stories about someone made fun of someone not knowing what was going on in their life, and then they tell the rest of the story, and you're sitting there going, oh, so I had dummy. That's true in every single case. But that's hard not to judge. So it's really important by chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, we can purify that part of our person that allows us to see that true entity of that person. And that's their Buddha nature. We already know they have hell, hunger, animality, anger, because they fluctuate through those. But to realize that they also are a Buddha. So that means they don't have problems. It means they have the Buddha. Next slide, please. So President Keita put together an essay, And part of the essay, I just pulled some of the parts out because I thought this was a great visual. He's talking about renewing ourselves every day. And he kind of recorded, he kept his diary. I mean, he kept his diary like nobody else keeps a diary. He can remember facts, names, dates, times, places, all that. It's all recorded. He used that diary to help him write the New Human Revolution. So he went through and he said, okay, I want to know how I've led each decade of my life. And so he laid it out, age 10, age 20, 30, 40, 50. So he says, to age 10, growing up the son of a humble seaweed harvester. To age 20, self-awakening and struggling against illness, as well documented. To age 30, studying and practicing Buddhism and making earnest efforts to defeat the demons of illness. To the age of 40, perfecting my study and practice of Nichiren Daishonin's teachings. To the age of 50, making a clear statement in society. To the age of 60, completing the foundation for the Kosen Rufu movement in Japan. And then it was really interesting to read his next comment. But my diary said nothing about what happens after age 60. I never thought I'd live beyond that age. So then he goes on, if I were to set down what I have accomplished from age 60 to present, along with what I envisioned for the decade ahead, it would read as follows. To the age of 70, establishing the principles of a new humanism. To the age of 80, completing the foundation of worldwide Kosen Rufu. And I was talking, I think it was you or someone, we were talking about, he's very close to having to add another decade in there. What's he going to do when he's 90? Okay, so as I read that, I asked myself, mine looks like a blank page compared to that. So maybe I should really even begin to think how, each decade I can renew myself every day. And I can start every day that will create that new decade. So, we have all these great tools that were given to us by Nichiren Daishonin. Through our study, we can learn what the best way to practice and challenge and overcome our problems in life, become happy, not only for ourselves, but for others. Because if our others are not happy, we just need to turn on the news and we can find out how that affects everybody else, okay? And the answer to that is exactly what we're studying today. How can we, our Buddha nature, come out to where we're focused on the accomplishment of worldwide Kosen Rufu? I won't say all the time because I sleep sometimes. And I don't dream that way. So how can we really put that into action in our everyday life? Well, we're really focused. If this is going to happen, who has to do it? It's us. It's our future generation, our youth generation. Yes. Take care of us. I'm getting old. Okay, that's right on time, I think. That's all the slides I have. What I would like to do is we're going to have question and answer for those that have questions. We have experts here. They're going to come up and help with the answers. So are there any questions? I must have thoroughly confused you.
Great job. I think it's awesome.
Yeah. You want a copy of it? I have it right here. I'll give it to you. And that's a wonderful question he asked about where can you get a copy of that essay. This is a youth division. I'm sure that they would use something like this to say, how can I check myself on what progress we're doing following our mentor? Great question. I have the copy. You didn't have to answer that much, no? Do you have anything you'd like to add? Anybody?
Anyone on the phone like to ask a question?
No, nothing right now. So quite a bit to unpack.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm also asking folks I'm texting people to ask them to send in questions if they have any.
Okay, and rather than hold everybody up, we could respond back to them individually, so everybody can enjoy the rest of their day.
I'm gonna find something that we can share with you. How many of you were able to go see a Kenny Daily? Quite a few. I just want to tie in what Chris said. Chris did a wonderful job of explaining the persecutions of Tatsunokuchi. I just want to tie this in. Akini, and this is Machiko, we don't recognize the voice. She said, to live a great life, change your life first. Take it one day at a time and never retreat in faith. This is the not regressing. And not advancing is retreating. If we're not advancing, we are retreating. So the question was, how do we do this? How do we live this great life? And she said, through self-reflection, prayer, for wisdom and compassion, and embrace the spirit of mentor-disciple. And this is where what Chris mentioned earlier about behavior. When we watch our mentors, is behavior, right? And attitude. She said, when we embrace the spirit of mentor-disciple, then our attitude shifts and our behavior shifts. And that's where you will not be judging people. Because you start that your attitude shifts, your behavior shifts. And she said, really try to seek out the good in someone. And so when I was at North Olympic World Peace Prayer earlier this month, she said, look out for the good in people. And you know how easy it is? If I ask you, whoever you live with, your spouse, your mother, whoever, I live with both. But anyway, think about something you really don't like them to do. And I'll give countdown. 3, 2, 1, start thinking.
Yeah.
And then done. And you probably can come up with 20 things in that short time, right? I don't like this, I don't like that. If they did this better, I'd have a happier life, and blah, 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 blah. Now, I say 3, 2, 1. Now think of something that you really see as good in that person. And you might be, well, let me think. About 15 years ago, I think, right? It's so easy to judge on the negative. Well, we really should get to the life state of a Buddha, which Chris was mentioning earlier, so that we're not judging. So here's one question that came across the text. It says, if I am not being persecuted for practicing the mystic law, does that mean I'm not practicing correctly? If I am not being persecuted for practicing the mystic law, does that mean I'm not practicing correctly? So that's a very interesting question, isn't it? But you know where the answer lies? Within oneself. Because for me, for example, I know when I'm not practicing correctly, which means my world may not turn upside down, like this person is, I think, saying that they're not being persecuted. But having practiced for a while, I really start to understand when I'm not practicing correctly. I'll be the first one to know that. I'll be the first one to know I'm not doing enough activities for myself, not because someone else told me. I'm not chanting enough, again, not because someone else, it's myself. It's like my own self-reflection, which Akemi talked about earlier. So the important thing is not to get comfortable, not to think that because you have no obstacles, I can't believe you have none. This was a much deeper statement saying, if I'm not being persecuted for practicing the law, does that mean I'm not practicing correctly? I think it's a time to really self-reflect. You can self-reflect and determine if you're practicing correctly or not. Because it's not only the obstacles that come from without, it's the obstacles from within. When you start downing yourself, you're depressed, you're jealous, all those low life kind of conditions come out, that are not practicing correctly, okay? If our outside environment shows a lot of challenges, that doesn't mean we're not practicing correctly. It means we have an opportunity to bust through those obstacles, right? So that's not a very easy question to answer, but the answer comes from within. If we are ordinary people then we might say, I must not be doing everything because nothing's happening. If we are extraordinary people, meaning we recognize the Buddha within, we will recognize from the five senses that Chris talked about earlier, what's going on in our life. Does that make sense? You're able to really see with the Buddha's eyes he mentioned earlier. The five components of life start with the five senses. And it's really about where is your life condition so that you can understand what's going on in your life. And your perception is so tied to your life condition. If your life condition is low, what you perceive someone doing may be totally off. And that's why Akemi says, really rely on mentor disciples so we can shift our attitude, shift our behavior, so then our eyes are reflected as the Buddha's eyes so that we can see that we're not so judgmental to people. Everyone's trying to make an effort of some sort. So the important thing to that question is don't be comfortable, okay? If you think your life is not moving fast or your practice is not correct, and I'm here to tell you, in the NSA days, we were all ready to tell you how your practice was not correct, right? But today is much harder. No one's telling you your practice is not correct. You're self-reflecting, and you are seeing for yourself, oh, my practice is not correct. According to President Keida's guidance, Nichiren Daishonin's teachings, I am not centered on the law of non-myoho Renge-kyo. So hopefully that helps with the texture. Okay. I just want to share with you our opinion today.
Chris did a great job. Machiko always follows up with the key points. And I want to go to the last part.
And who are you?
I'm Anthony, by the way. And so on page 50, the title is Let's Make Further Great Strides Forward Starting Today. In the record of the orally transmitted teachings, Nichiren Daishonin cites a commentary by Futa Shi of China. Morning after morning, we rise up with the Buddha. Evening after evening, we lie down with the Buddha. Moment by moment, we attain the way. Moment by moment, we reveal our true identity. Casting off the transient and revealing the true means striving in faith based on the spirit of true cause, exactly as Chris talked about, of continuously setting forth from the present moment. It means taking action right now. When we do that, we will be filled with the great life force of time without beginning. Every moment, the Buddhism of the sun, illuminating the darkness of the latter day of the law, will rise brilliantly in our lives. Let's make further great strides forward, starting today, bringing the sun of human revolution to shine and actively tapping the infinite potential of ourselves and others. And so this limitless potential is continuously in our life. A lot of times we forget about it. And so I want to briefly share a little experience. I have a new job that I started on Monday, which is the home base is like 5 minutes away at the hospice house. I'm back to home health. Yay. And so at my previous job, the day before my last day, I was running back and forth to the parking lot because there was a maintenance guy who wanted to have the administrator's office open so he could do maintenance in there. And so I asked the office manager 2 times to please unlock that door so that that guy could go do what he needs to do. And so she said, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And so the guy, meantime, is standing right in front of that door and he says, I thought you said you were gonna get this door open. So I said, I'm sorry. I will bring her right back and she will open the door so that you can do what you need to do. And so as I'm running across the parking lot, yet a third time, the Buckley Fire Department come in with a truck. This time they didn't bring the 8 car, so I thought that was kind of weird. But usually when they come, they're always gonna come pick up somebody. So anyway, so I'm running across the parking lot and they honk the horn, honk, louder than it could be, right? And so I stop in my tracks, and they point at me and say, come here, come here. So instead of running across the parking lot, I went up to the fire engine, and as soon as I got to the fire engine, all 5 of the people that were in the engine got out of the engine and stood right next to each other. The person who was responsible for that group of people, he handed me a card, and he said, on behalf of the Buckley Fire Department, we wanted to express our appreciation for the job that you did for us. So I was like, what? Like, what? What is this all about? So anyway, so I accepted the card, and then they said, well, since we have this truck here, do you want to ride? I said, can I drive? They said, no, you can't drive, but you can go sit in any of the seats. And so I decided to sit in the back with the rest of the fire department. So as we were getting strapped in, we got our headphones on, and we drove around for about 4 blocks in Buckley. And what they were telling me over the earphones was that what I used to do is every time we called the fire department, I would always meet them at the front door, and I would give them a report about what's going on with that patient, and then they would go back to the patient, and then they would be able to take the patient to the next level of care. So what they said to me in the headphones, which I was blown away, was that nobody ever does that for them, and that they were so happy that I spent the time to actually, really care about their position in coming into the building and being able to take the patient to where they need to be. And so they said, in fact, nobody ever does that for them. And so I was like, wow. So I was floating on cloud 50,000 million, whatever, all right? Just so excited because I did my very best to really support these guys so that they could get the patient to, as quickly as possible, to medical intervention that could potentially save their life or at least stabilize them. And so every time I did that for them. And one thing that I always did too was I told the patient, all right, I'll see you when you get back, because when patients go out via ambulance and that kind of thing, they're scared to death. So somebody's got to give them some kind of solace to say, oh, it's not going to be as bad as you think. So my joking way, all right, don't give them a hard time. Make sure you come back. Don't steal nothing, all kinds of stuff I would tell them, right? And so as it turns out, so they brought me back, and I opened up this card, and this card is signed by every member of the Buckley Fire Department. And it says, thank you, great job, good luck, right? And so just this one effort, exactly as this last paragraph says, start today fresh, right? And so as my boss, she was actually in Morton, and she came back and she found out what had happened. And she said, the Buckley Fire Department never does that to people. So I was the first person. So all of that to say, we never know how we're going to impact one person's life. And, even in the midst of our own stuff, right? Because we all got stuff. We have a chance to either, really negatively impact that person's life or positively impact that person's life. And so, as it turns out, I am working on this positively impacting this person's life, being in my own personal home life. And so, my message to all of us is that this Buddha condition is so pure and so great in our life. It just takes our doubt, our not feeling worthy, not feeling like we can do it, get rid of all that stuff so that we can actually do exactly what the Buddha does. And the more that we practice doing this, the more that it becomes central in our life. Like Machiko Alexander, right? She can quote the Gosho and direct you in the right place. I don't think she ever has a problem, right? She doesn't have problems, right? She practices so hard, working so diligently to make sure that she is centered. So all of us has that potential. And so, we have the same power, as one person does. And so as we work so hard on this human revolution that we get to do every day, that Buddha condition can continue to shine. So I just really wanted to share that little brief experience. And then, by the way, my new job is $15,000 more a year. It's right down the road. Did I say it's right down the road? Blows my mind. It's right down the road. I can come to the icon, chant early in the morning, if I'm not lazy. come here after work and refresh myself. But just an amazing benefit from the loans. And so anyway, thank you so much. You know, we just finished the May 3rd contribution, and you know, we said thank you so much, but you know, this is the core of Shuri Hotsu. So so bringing it back to say thank you so much, and then how can we make that thank you so much grow into something greater than we never expected. So anyway, thank you so much.
All right, thank you, everyone.
The button back there, John.
Oh, yeah, but then we don't want to project.
Check right on it. Thank you.
Next month, just so you know, just throw your hand in the air, just with your hand in the air, they're gonna be next month.